Hey football fans, welcome back to another episode of Throwback Thursday. Now that the start of the 2023 NFL regular season is right around the corner, we're going to shift our focus here from videos about teams of the past to videos that spotlight members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Today we're going to look at the inaugural induction class of 1963. The initial class had 17 inductees, so we'll focus on 6 of them today and continue with this first class over the next few weeks. Okay, our first inductee is Sammie Baugh. He played 16 seasons in the NFL. He had 7 All-NFL selections. He had 31 defensive interceptions and threw 187 touchdowns and 21,886 yards. He arrived on the pro football scene in 1937, the same year that the Redskins moved from Washington to Boston. The Texas Christian star was the team's first-round pick that year, and over the next 16 seasons, Slingin Sammie not only helped establish the pro game in the nation's capital, he also was a major influence in the offensive revolution that occurred in the late 30s and early 40s. When Bob first started with the Redskins, pro football was largely a grinded-out ground game. The forward pass was something to be used with caution and never inside your 30-yard line, except in desperate situations. By the time Baugh was through, the forward pass was a primary offensive weapon. Obviously, such a change could not be totally brought about by one individual, but Baugh was the catalyst that changed the game. No one had seen a passer who could throw it with such accuracy. Baugh started his career as a single-wing tailback and didn't make the switch to the T formation until 1944. He won a record-setting 6 NFL passing titles and earned first-team All-NFL honors 7 times in his career. Sammie also led the NFL in punting 4 straight years from 1940 through 1943. Extremely versatile, he led the NFL in passing, pass interceptions, and punting in 1943. One of his best single performances came on Sammie Baugh Day in 1947 when he passed for 355 yards and 6 touchdowns against the Chicago Cardinals, that season's eventual champions. Baugh, although highly competitive, was still comparatively easygoing and never lost his sense of humor. When the Chicago Bears defeated the Redskins 73-0 in the famous 1940 NFL title battle, a Redskins end dropped a touchdown pass in the end zone. Later, reporters asked Baugh if the outcome would have been different had he caught the pass. And Baugh answered, yeah, it would have made it 73-7. So, what a character. I mean, this guy, we can't even think of anything like this today. Maybe the only thing I can think of today that might be comparable is like baseball's Shohei Ohtani, where he's a pitcher and a hitter, and he's good at both. You know, this guy played quarterback and he was defensive back, had all those interceptions, which is just outstanding. This is a name that I recognized. I never obviously got to see him play, but this is why I like going back into the past, because people like this are out there for us to discover. And, I mean, just looking at some of his stats, just incredible. You know, 62%, 70% completion percentage in 1945. He averaged 56.5% for his career. Just pretty incredible. Almost 22,000 yards. And like they said, punting. He was actually the team's punter for 3 years straight, from 39 to 41. And then it looks like he focused primarily on being a quarterback until 1952. So just outstanding. So that's our first gridiron legend today. Okay, our next gridiron legend is Bert Bell. He's a contributor, not a player or a coach, but a contributor, and he was in the NFL for 27 seasons. This is a guy I'd never heard of, but here's what it says on his bio.
And I'd like to welcome the Bert Bell family.
In November, the Pennsylvania Historical Commission dedicated a marker to the late Bert Bell. It was here, in the village of Narberth, that Bell lived and almost single-handedly built the foundation of modern professional football.
Bert Bell did it all. He sold the tickets, he coached the team, and he brought home the gate receipts in a cigar box.
The old-timers know it, and I hope these guys playing today remember a guy by the name of Bert Bell. If it wasn't for him, you wouldn't be a millionaire.
Bert Bell was a player and coach at the University of Pennsylvania. He was the first owner and coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. He later co-owned and coached the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it was his visionary leadership as NFL commissioner from 1946 until his death in 1959 that defines his place in football history.
I remember Bert Bell as a figure to me of what a commissioner should be. He was gruff, he was a fan, he loved football.
Bert Bell was a guy who, for the first time, people could point to in football, as they had in baseball with Landis. They knew who was in charge.
Bell created the draft, which gave the weaker teams first shot at the top college talent. He introduced the concept of revenue sharing, with each team getting an equal portion of the network TV money.
What he was saying is not only that we will try to level the field competitively, which was his main goal. It led us to a future where New York was not the center of the universe anymore, that you could play in Green Bay or anywhere else and become a national figure.
For 60 or 70,000 people to do this for the Green Bay Packers and the city of Green Bay, it certainly should set an example for some of the larger cities of what enthusiasm and desire and love of sports will do.
The pro game flourished in the 1950s, and like a doting father, Bert Bell guided its every step.
Bert Bell was the only commissioner that used to travel around to all the football teams during training camp. And he would always say, gentlemen, there's 3 ways to get you out of this league, all right? Drinking, gambling, and women. And let me tell you something, when you put them all together, you're history.
He dearly loved the football players. He would always conclude his talks with the teams with, "This is my home phone number. If you have any problems at all, you can call me at any time of the day or night."
League meetings were absolutely a scream. Bert would be going through the halls, and he'd say, "Who wants chicken sandwiches? Who wants chocolate ice cream? Order what you want, boys," meaning to the press. "It's all on the Eagles. They made all the money this year." I mean, that was the way Bert ran the league. He ran it out of his heart and off the top of his head.
He had an argument one time with a sports writer here in Philadelphia, and the writer wrote over, I forget what the incident was, that now there were 2 bells in Philadelphia that were cracked. And he enjoyed that.
They pulled up to the Vesper Club in downtown Philadelphia after an Eagles game. And Bert Bell and them got out on another couple. And as they walked inside, a guy in the parking lot there said, "The Eagles stink." So Bert didn't say anything. He took them in, seated them, and he excused himself, went out. They heard the ruckus. They go out, and Bert Bell is rolling around fighting this guy that had said the Eagles stink. Now, there's the kind of guy you want to be your commissioner.
Unitas fakes to Amici, then drills a 15-yard touchdown pass to end Ray Berry.
Pro football came of age with the 1958 championship game. Millions watched, as for the first time, an NFL game went to overtime. Bert Bell's inspired marriage of network TV and sudden death secured the future of pro football.
On 3rd down, 4 blocks, and Amici rockets for the touchdown. The Colts win, the greatest game ever played.
Leaving the press box, I encountered Bert Bell and Art Rooney and Janie Bell head on. And I said, "Bert, it's been a tremendous day for the league, hasn't it?" And he said, in a very paradoxical way, "John, old boy, I never thought that I would live long enough to see sudden death."
I think at that juncture, my dad knew that now the National Football League turned its biggest corner.
In 1959, the league was thriving. Bert Bell's dream had become a reality. But on a warm October day in Philadelphia, the 64-year-old commissioner suffered a heart attack, just as Tommy McDonald scored the winning touchdown.
I spun around and I looked back, and everybody on the bench and stuff was running like toward that other end of the stadium, and I'm thinking, hey, the touchdown happened over here, you know.
And I went over the wall. It was only like a 6-foot jump, and I ran around. And by the time I had gotten around to the stretcher, he was just about gone.
But he died right where he started. And if you were doing a movie and put that kind of ending on it, you go, oh, this is fake. But this is just how it happened. He died right where he started as a young quarterback at the University of Pennsylvania, and both teams, the Eagles and the Steelers, he owned them both.
In his lifetime, he targeted all his hopes and ambitions, his dreams and struggles to professional football. He took a game and made it America's passion.
So again, here's a guy that I didn't know about. He was actually one of the league's first commissioners and really helped guide them into prosperity. So that was really cool to see. And I would venture to say that most people today probably don't remember who Bert Bell is. Again, really cool information. I hope you like it. That's our second gridiron legend. Let's get on to number 3. Okay, our third gridiron legend today is Joe Carr, who was also a contributor. Not a coach or a player, but a contributor. So he was around the NFL for 19 seasons. This is another guy that I had never heard of. So it's really good to find out about these people. No one better understood the necessity of bringing some order to the early day professional football than Joe Carr, a former Columbus, Ohio newspaperman and a manager of pro football's Columbus Panhandles. So Carr's persistence finally paid off when in 1920, the American Professional Football Association was organized in Canton, Ohio. Jim Thorpe, best known name of pro football in 1920, was named the APFA's first president, but a year later, Carr replaced him in the leadership role. The next year, in 1922, the league changed its name to the National Football League. Carr strongly felt the public had the inherent right to know the league was being run honestly and capably. Immediately, he established a standard player contract modeled on the one used in baseball. He cracked down on the hiring of collegians under assumed names. When the Green Bay Packers, a new team in 1921, ignored Carr's edict, he forfeited the franchise and then renewed it under new ownership a few months later. In 1925, Red Grange stunned the football world by joining the Chicago Bears just 10 days after his final game with the University of Illinois. Sensing that resentment in college circles would persist if such practices continued, Carr ruled in the future no NFL team could sign a college player until his eligibility was completed. Violators were promised a stiff fine or loss of franchise or both. Carr recognized that to survive, the NFL needed teams in large cities, and his first target was New York City, and through Joe's efforts, the New York Giants were born in 1925. The 70,000 crowd that turned out at the Polo Grounds later that year to see the Red Grange-led Bears proved big city fans would support pro football. A dedicated, no-nonsense administrator, Carr also served in executive positions in minor league baseball and professional basketball during his tenure as NFL president. So this is really incredible. I mean, here you have one guy that held positions in 3 different professional sports at one time. I mean, today there's no way anybody would do that. But again, one of these forefathers that had the foresight to see where the league could go and put his stamp on it. It's really cool to find out these facts. All right, so that was number 3, I believe. Let's get on to number 4 for our Gridiron Legends. Okay, our 4th Gridiron Legend is Earl Clark, who was a running back / quarterback. Looks like he played 7 seasons in the league. He was an all-NFL selection 3 times. He scored 71 extra points, a total of 368 points, and 42 touchdowns. To read from his bio here, it looks like his nickname was Dutch. Dutch Clark's story doesn't fit the ordinary picture of an all-time great. In 1929, he became the first Colorado college football star to be named All-America, yet he didn't play pro football until almost 2 years after he graduated, when he joined the Portsmouth Spartans in 1931. He retired from the pro game after 2 All-Pro seasons to become the head coach at the tiny Colorado School of Mines. However, Clark returned to football in 1934, rejoining his team, which by then had been sold and had become the Detroit Lions. For the next 5 years, Clark, from his tailback position, was the general in Detroit's famed infantry attack that in 1936 set a team rushing record that stood for 36 years. He was called the quarterback because he called the plays. A true triple threat back, Dutch consistently finished among the leaders in rushing and once completed 53.5% of his passes in a season when the league average was just 36.5%. He also led the league in scoring 3 times, kicked field goals and extra points, and is generally considered the last of the great drop kickers. The versatile Clark was all NFL 6 of the 7 seasons he played. Although a great athlete, Dutch was not particularly fast and had such poor eyesight, he had trouble seeing his receivers. According to his teammates, though, he had the uncanny knack of being in the right place at the right time. Furthermore, his teammates swore that no one could follow blockers as well as Dutch. Humble, Clark was always conscious of his role as team leader. So unassuming, he sometimes avoided calling plays directed his way for fear of hogging the limelight. If Dutch stepped on the field with Red Grange, Jim Thorpe, and George Gipp, a rival coach once said, Dutch would be the general. So again, here's another guy that I did not know about. And they call him a quarterback, but he was only a quarterback in name because he called the plays. So he was more of a rushing threat than anything else. For his career total, he passed for 1,507 yards in 7 years. So definitely not a true quarterback. He rushed for 2,772 yards in a career. So again, by today's standards, not even close to what rushers are today. But he was also the place kicker, so he kicked extra points and field goals. So really, really cool to learn about these guys from past eras. So that was number 4 on our list of Gridiron Legends today. Let's see what number 5 holds for us. All right, our 5th Gridiron Legend today is running back and quarterback Harold Grange, otherwise known as Red. He played 9 seasons in the NFL. Then in the early 1920s, George Halas was desperately seeking a special gate attraction to help draw attention not only to the Chicago Bears, but also to the National Football League as a whole. University of Illinois running back Harold Red Grange, who ran with ghost-like speed and elusiveness, seemed to be the answer. Although college stars rarely turned to pro football in those days, Halas and his partner Dutch Sterneman pondered just how much Grange could do for their team. Grange, who worked as an ice delivery man during his college summers, agreed to play for the Bears. On Thanksgiving Day 1925, just 10 days after Grange's last college game, 36,600 people filled Cubs Park, now known as Wrigley Field, to see Red's pro debut against the Chicago Cardinals. 10 days later, more than 70,000 packed New York's Polo Grounds to see Red and the Bears take on the New York Giants. Sensing that a rare opportunity was at hand, Grange's agent, C.C. Cash and Carry Pyle, Halas, and Sterneman lined up an exhausting barnstorming tour of the country, winning thousands of new fans for pro football. When Pyle and the Bears ownership couldn't agree on terms for the 1926 season, Pyle formed a rival American Football League with a team in New York called the Yankees that featured Grange. While the Yankees had moderate success, the rest of the league failed. Pyle was allowed to move his team into the NFL in 1927, but Grange suffered a crippling knee injury during a game against the Bears. I didn't play at all in 1928, Grange remembers. I was just an ordinary ball carrier after that. I did develop into a pretty good defensive back, however. Halas invited Grange back to the Bears in 1929, and he remained with them through the 1934 season. In the 1933 NFL championship game, Grange was a defensive hero with a difficult touchdown-saving tackle in the final seconds. So here again is another player that I knew of, but I never took the time to research or even look into. I never had the opportunity to watch him play. And it's sad because we'll probably never know how good these people really were. We only have the words and maybe some pictures left behind for us to kind of look at. But it's kind of incredible that they're saying that the college stars really didn't sign up to play professional football at that time. So very interesting to find these little nuggets in here when we're looking at our gridiron legends. So that's number 5. Let's go ahead and get into number 6. Our 6th gridiron legend is George Halas, who was inducted as a head coach and a contributor. Looks like he had 64 seasons in the NFL overall, won 6 NFL titles, and had 324 coaching victories. George Halas was associated with the Chicago Bears and the National Football League from their inception in 1920 until his death in 1983. He represented the Bears, originally known as the Decatur Staleys, at the NFL's organizational meeting held in Canton. During his incredible career, he filled the shoes of owner, manager, player, and promoter, and was an influential leader among the NFL's ownership. It was, however, as a coach that he excelled and was best known. Although Halas coached the Bears for 40 seasons, he stepped away from the coaching ranks 3 times, from 1930 to 1932, 1942 to 1945 to serve in the military, and 1956 to 57. Each time, a rejuvenated Halas returned to the sidelines to coach, and he won an NFL championship. Twice in 1934 and 42, Halas' teams had undefeated regular season records. His 318 regular season wins and 324 total victories were long-standing NFL records until broken by Don Shula in 1993. His Chicago Bears teams won 6 NFL titles, the first coming in 1921 after the Staleys moved to Chicago. George's Bears won 3 other divisional titles and finished second 15 times. Only 6 of Halas' 40 teams finished below the 500 mark. As a coach, Halas was first in many ways. The first to hold daily practice sessions, to utilize film of opponents' games for study, to schedule a barnstorming tour, and to have his team's games broadcast on radio. With his players, George maintained tight control. Disobedience and insubordination were not tolerated. Along with Ralph Jones, his coach from 1930 through 1932, and consultant Clark Shaughnessy, Halas perfected the T formation attack with the man in motion. It was this destructive force that propelled the Bears to their stunning 73-0 NFL title win over Washington in 1940 NFL championship game and sent every other league team scurrying to copy the Halas system. So, here's another gridiron legend that I have heard of and actually got to see a little bit, right? In 1983, he died. But up until that point, you could see him on the sidelines when they broadcast the games and things like that. So I knew he was an owner, but I never knew this guy coached in the NFL for 40 seasons. For 40 seasons, he was a head coach. And only 6 of those teams was below 500, which is just outstanding. I mean, I can't think of another coach that even comes close. Really glad to get into some of the history here. So that's our 6th gridiron legend. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you tune in next week and see who the next 6 are going to be. Stay safe, and I'll see you next week.